Welcome, everyone. And if you're tuning in for the first time, this is where we strip down leadership to its raw, unfiltered, unabashed truths. I'm Pooja, and today we're going to be talking about intuition in leadership. My guest is Maria. Welcome, Maria. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you on BareLead. But before we dive into the theme, could you please share a little bit about yourself with the listeners?
Sure. I am a chief data intelligence officer. So, data officers are an interesting breed of people. And luckily, I have found incredible women to really mentor with in my current role. I've been in data intelligence exclusively, pretty much in financial services for about 18 years, and then exclusively in banking for about 10. And so I've definitely utilized my fair share of intuition throughout that time. But
Mhm,
in financial services, especially, I've noticed how much with the onset of AI that trajectory has shifted as a priority,
mhm.
and how much as a service operation, they're starting to depend a lot more on user experience intuition on a variety of things, and how much I just use it in my day to day to really sniff out what kind of campaigns to use since I'm now at a marketing agency that exclusively works with banks and credit unions and other, banking type institutions. So, yeah, a little bit about me.
Fantastic. Thank you. And I would assume that, as you grew into leadership roles now in the C-suite, the relationship with intuition must have also evolved, right? Because
Oh,
you
yes.
early on, like when you're starting off, you don't have the space to listen to your intuition. But as you grow older, sometimes you realize that's probably the only decision marker you have in many cases. So walk me through how your relationship has changed with intuition as you've grown, and if there was ever a moment where you realized that intuition was not just about an instinct, but a leadership capability as well.
The biggest shift in my own life, especially as I started to, get promoted, get more responsibility, was realizing that my intuition in my personal life could be extremely effective at work and
Mhm.
trusting it. I think my ability to trust my own gut has come leaps and bounds from where it was before because there was countless times with like just certain decisions where one executive really wants to jump on board with either a new trend or something different. And then something told me not to. I have not regretted that multiple times. And then as I started to do that, like not take a certain job opportunity or not move or certain things where I could just sense that they might have not been the right decision for me at the time,
Mm.
I proved to myself more and more through each like success, even if it wasn't outward, that I could trust my own instincts,
Yeah.
regardless of if it was a metric, a job, a person. Did not steer me wrong, but I had to convince myself,
Mm.
over time because infusing the personal intuition at work felt very foreign and almost wrong at first because I was like, well, is this really a skill? I'm being told constantly that emotional intelligence isn't, you know, I'm being told that all these things and then come now it's like, oh, well, soft skills are, the next frontier of AI. And
Yeah.
so it was really a test of confidence and trust in myself more than anything else because
Right.
I naturally am an intuitive person, like deeply, and that was very hard to balance after a while. But my own trust in myself and confidence really shifted the needle for sure.
Right. And the paradox or the irony that I also see is in your title, right? Because it's
Yeah.
about data intelligence. And I also see the world being increasingly obsessed with data. So when leaders have to make choices, sometimes, you have to trust the numbers. And in the absence of numbers, sometimes you also have to trust the feeling that something isn't really quite right. So how do you know when to trust what?
Oh, so what's funny, the best analysts I know have a sense for numbers,
Mm,
right? It's almost like they can smell if something's wrong. And I think that comes from two things, practice and curiosity.
mm,
And a lot of times, curiosity and intuition can become really close friends after a while because you'll know after working with a data set or, something. The more you work with it, 10,000 hours theory, I still abide by that. Thank you, Outliers book, Malcolm Gladwell. The more you work in a certain industry or the more you work with certain data sets, you kind of get a sense for like that seasonally doesn't happen.
Mm,
Why is that happening? And oftentimes, especially now with the onset of artificial intelligence, that is a skill that is so important that I do think it has to do with both. You need to have a balance of true practice, and then it can get enhanced on the curious and intuitive side.
yeah.
But the marriage of both, I think the curiosity is more inherent in a personality, but
Mm,
the practice can make it seem more like intuition. Because I've seen a lot of people that don't have very high intuition that just have a good sense for numbers because they've worked with the information or in the industry for a really long time, right? So they can like point to something, but it's more of a like a white knuckling approach. And then
mm,
there's other people like me who will, see a line chart and be like, that's not right. And I won't really know why, but I trust my instincts because I've both worked with it a lot, but I also know that my sixth sense tends to win out sometimes over other people's, and then I've predicted something that happened. So
mm.
it's a balance of when I open my mouth
Yeah.
often because the stakes could be higher if I'm like, we should do this. Here's the price tag. That's a lot higher than I want to spend. But it just tends to be more often than not, I will speak up with my intuitive sense, not so much numbers, because I've realized that they tend to align and that I have a strange way of kind of knowing.
Mm,
So, but trying to teach analysts that, um, I hire for it now by giving them a set of questions before they start to work with me because I really just want to see how they think
yeah.
because it's a problem solving approach. I want to understand how they're breaking down the information that I'm giving them because it's not necessarily about the right answer. It's about how many questions they ask me back that
Mm,
I would either have asked or that I'm interested in
right.
because it's the amount of drilling. Anytime you're drilling through something, you know, a lot of people don't want to excavate their own curiosity or excavate something. And if you have that natural sense of having to get to the bottom of it,
Hmm.
detective almost, that's going to pay off in spades in my world.
Right. And
So,
I think it's a good point that you made there also when you said that you were, standing next to the line graph and you said that, okay, this doesn't seem quite right.
mhm,
Sometimes you also are presented with evidence,
mhm,
uh, where your intuition somehow says, no, this is not the right decision, and I want to go against that. Or there are people or voices in the room, probably other C-suite leaders who want to go a certain way, and you're like, no,
yep.
doesn't make sense. Have you gone against one of those? Could you maybe give an example of, what happened and what it taught you?
Yeah, today I we needed to spend a lot of money on something.
Mm,
And I had quickly needed to analyze all the reasons why I needed to defend, why the money needed to be spent
mm,
for client satisfaction. And I knew we could do it a variety of ways, but it would be more of a burden on my team short term.
mm,
And I had to just make the decision to spend it because it wasn't going to be a popular one. And I would have to I'm going to have to explain that, why the expense in the line item was doubled.
mhm.
But I do know that in the long term, in the next 3 months, that will not only pay off, but we'll have gotten that money back. But I
Yeah.
haven't proven that to anybody yet. I just had to do it. I had to pull the trigger because I knew that today was the right day to do it for a myriad of reasons. So it's not going to affect me negatively today because I have a lot of autonomy in my current role. But if I was in
Mhm.
a different organization, but that's why I set up my life in the way that I have, where I work with a lot of people that not only trust me, but I deeply trust to be able to make decisions on the fly like that.
Yeah.
If leadership doesn't have that balance where you don't have autonomy, especially data officers tend to get holding the bag for other things because you're not, directly affecting revenue.
Yeah.
You're one step away from it. And that can be very dicey if you don't have the right type of autonomy or the ability to like, well, no, I'm going to step in and we need to do this now. And if you think that efficiency metric has anything to do with me, that's not the case. So early and often stepping in, making decisions and getting ahead of it, I think that's the best thing a data officer can do. But yeah, That was a rough one today, but yeah, it was against the grain for sure. So,
Hopefully it pays off in the due course. I'm pretty
yeah.
confident it will. But, you know, Maria, I've also learned the importance of intuition, but I've also found
Mm.
myself being wrong.
No, of
I'm
course.
curious to understand in your experience, how do you distinguish intuition from bias, fear, wishful thinking? Because honestly, there
Mm.
is so much noise out there about the spiritual realm, the
Yeah.
manifestation, the wishful thinking,
Yes.
and so on. And I feel like there is a voice of reason that also needs to kind of interject. And I want to understand how you perceive the balance between intuition and wishful thinking.
So often I find that, even working in IT, you're used to failing.
Mm,
You get very used to continuous improvement because everything fails every day, right?
yeah,
Like you're constantly dealing with the ticket of something that's failed. Like, and so you sort of get accustomed to being wrong, if you
yeah.
will. And you just start to reframe it in your head as continuous improvement. That was a huge blessing for my intuitive side and me figuring out my own bias because I learned early on that I needed to surround myself with people that were better at things than me, especially at certain parts of my. I have ADHD. I will skip over governance in certain ways, right? So I have really high responsibility engineers. Like I tend to always find a really high governance oriented person because they will call me out quick and early if something isn't aligning with what it said in documentation or other things. So that there isn't like a worry or a standard or fear behind the failure, the call out for anyone. It's just more of an open approach to Maria messed up. It's
Yeah.
okay. We're gonna move. We're gonna like disagree and commit, or we're gonna adjust from there. So I build my team and I build my processes around expecting to be afraid of something, expecting bias, expecting all of these things, because we're all just projecting our own visual understanding of the world anyway. So I expect me to have some sort of bias response or fear every day. But I
Mm,
just make sure that the people around me trust me enough to tell me when that happens or if I don't see it myself. And I've had countless situations where that's happened.
mm,
Like where like last week, my boss called me after a meeting. He's like, "You all right? Everything going okay? Because I think you really wanted to punch that person in the face pretty hard. Your face changed. The Italian came out kind of fast." And I'm really grateful that he knows me so well that he could point that out and then feel comfortable enough to call me, talk about it, and then point out that like what I needed instead of that I lacked professionalism or like that something was wrong because he knows how I operate, you know? So like the inevitability of it happening is a
mm,
thing.
mm.
So if you put more people around you that understand where your gaps are, the
Yeah.
better off everybody is. And I've just had the luxury and the privilege of being able to do that.
Mm. I like that reframe where you talk about continuous improvement and testing out your biases as you go along the way. And you also
Yeah.
mentioned earlier on about curiosity and intuition going hand in hand. So I would assume that you are on the belief spectrum where you say that intuition is something that you can actually deliberately develop.
Yeah,
Um,
I do.
is there something else that you think leaders can do to develop strong intuition?
Best thing that I ever learned how to do with just basic somatic exercises
Mm,
was anytime I hear something, especially if it's something that I wouldn't even say the word feels, but I sense that something's off with the
yeah.
situation. I ask my body where I feel it. It's simple, it's a simple approach. And then I usually try to recenter where I like smell my surroundings. I talk about things that are in the room so that I'm really centering and staying present. And then I ask. And for whatever reason, because the body's sending the brain 80% of the signals, right? The brain's only sending 20% down.
Mm-hmm.
And the second brain thing with your stomach is the thing. It can function in certain, things without your brain's influence at all. So if you just listen to what it's telling you, most of the time, it's going to give you some sort of signal, even if there's detachment, even if you feel nothing. That's information,
Mm,
right? Because then you can start to associate if your stomach hurts when you're around a certain person, if a weird part of your shoulder starts to hurt when you're like something happens, or something good, like you feel giddiness around something else, or it just starts to get you more grounded in your surroundings and then be able to sense some like sense what your instincts are telling you.
Yeah.
And just having that in my back pocket when I feel a little bit more aloof or anything, it always it has never failed me. And I think everyone has natural intuition. I don't think anybody, I think it's just a spectrum like anything else. So some
Yeah.
people are born with a stronger antenna, if you will, one that's like, Mac Daddy. And other people just have to work at figuring out like where their antenna lives,
Yeah.
if it needs some adjustments more often. So, yeah, I do think it's definitely developed, but there's like some people, it's a competitive advantage from the onset.
Yeah, I remember when I was in my MBA college, there was an interesting exercise we did, and the question that our teacher asked us was, do you see to believe or do you believe to see?
Mm,
Um, and it was mind-boggling the split of people who actually would like to see before they believe. And I
hmm.
think as you grow older, you realize that there's so many variables outside your hand that you actually start with belief first.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's growing up, but it's definitely an exercise in intuition.
absolutely. Like
Yeah.
I often have found that science, I'm a scientist by nature. I like to think about myself that way, and I love like old philosophy. The old like scientists called themselves natural philosophers. I was like, it's just a beautiful way of expressing how I kind of have this interesting balance between strong intuition and scientific hypothesis.
Yeah.
And I'm like kind of middle brained in that way. And so often science just hasn't caught up with what this feels like, right? I like that the scientific method is incredibly rigorous. It protects people. It
Yeah.
protects a lot of things.
Yeah.
And yet, there's a lot of red tape for things that we kind of inherently know.
Mm,
I think they need each other, right? There needs to be thorough analysis of what we're like experimenting and what we're understanding over here. And yet, there needs to be more belief. I
yeah.
tend to err on the side of belief first over it. And yet, I know often that after trial and error and getting older, you're absolutely right. What I sense tends to come about over here. So letting myself take action on what I'm sensing earlier. I
Mm,
think that's the gift of getting more mature. Is
right.
just I know these things. They might have not been proven yet, but I can take action and take steps forward because I know this, even
Right.
if it's only belief according to other people. You
Mm.
know.
It's a good thing we chose this topic for our podcast today. So,
Yeah.
and I'm going to take you back to the zone of AI now with the
Yeah.
final question that I have for you, because I think AI is getting better at analyzing patterns. You see one tool after the other that's doing meta-analysis, sentiment analysis, what have you, making recommendations, predictive analysis. So, what role do you think intuition is actually going to play in the next generation of leadership?
Oof. So much. Like I just went to a data conference here in Massachusetts, like a CDO Vision conference, and the big topic was how sentiment analysis, empathy is the next frontier of AI
Mm,
because just by like nuts and bolts, the ability and the amount of text analysis that you can do now cheaply, or cheaply in terms of like how strong the engine needs to
yeah,
be in order to analyze people's feelings is completely different and scalable than it used to be. And so it is going to play a huge role in the next world that we live in, which is basically right now because of the amount of change that's happening. And it's more people that can sense strategically where things need to be adjusted and have a really good understanding of process and can communicate that, they are going to win the AI race
right.
because any really good strategic product owner or like crazy good, efficiency analyst, supply chain manager, those are the people. AI can't democratize that middle layer very well yet. The
Yeah.
semantic layer where you're analyzing the questions to ask, how
Mm,
to put pieces together, right? It can make each of those pieces incredibly fast, but you need to intuitively understand how those pieces could connect
yeah.
to make it either more efficient or better or appeal to people. Like Yeah, intuition and empathy are going to win that race because a lot of what strategy goes off of tends to be instinct.
Right, right.
It's going to need humans more than ever. And when someone can do that effectively, even if it's something as simple as like, customer journey stuff. A
Mm,
lot of that used to be like, you take a post-it note for every step in the chain, and then that still is an amazing exercise if you want to figure out what a process looks like and where the bottleneck is, right? Pick every single step of it, put each of the post-it notes on, every single step that you have throughout the chain, and do it for the customer's experience, do it for the employees, and then see where the gaps are.
yeah,
AI can do that very efficiently, right? Can tell you all the links in the chain, but only you can intuitively say whether or not, if you improve the bottleneck and then you do this, if Carla over in the other department is actually going to do her job or not, or
yeah.
if you can get like two people that don't usually work very well together to do that.
Mm,
Like all of those blended skills,
yeah,
it cannot democratize that very well yet because it does not think like a human. It thinks like a computer.
yeah,
And the way that you train it to think more like you is just giving it more and more pattern recognition, right?
yeah,
So giving it more and more idiosyncratic pieces. That's why they're not hallucinating as much as they used to. It's why like error resolution is easier because it has a shitload of training data
mm,
that it has become accustomed to every single type of conversation interaction and can tell when my hands are moving a certain way if that could mean something and then iterating upon it, right? That's the beauty of sentiment analysis. It's a shitload of data.
yeah.
It's not going to be able to do that as effectively as a conscious human. And
100%.
so it's going to be dramatically important in my opinion.
And I think as AI progresses, its ability to actually move in terms of maturity and what it can do is actually limited or capped or sealed by how humans perceive reality.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and
That's
humans
doesn't
perceive,
terrify me at all, that part. Oh
yeah,
yeah.
no.
Yeah.
But I think we have to kind of bring this into point that the perception of reality also keeps evolving every day.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So there's a caveat there in terms of how well AI will be suited for leadership and something as specific and nuanced as leadership, and where human beings will still kind of play a part and making sure that the puzzle actually makes sense.
Yes. Because like it can I think that there's almost like there was with the excitement. It's a bubble, but the
Mm,
bubble won't be as extreme as other bubbles
no,
fiscally, I don't think.
no.
It's more of a cultural one because the things that we think it can replace now, unless you're a power user like myself, my team, or people that are in the space,
Yeah.
you really know its limitations a
Yeah.
lot more of like what it needs to learn, where it's a toddler, where it's more of a teenager. Like that was a big joke at the data nerd conference. Like that's a teenager right now. We're dealing with
Dealing with
the
teenage.
pimples and the adolescence and I think that that will only continue because I don't think it's going to become like an old woman or an old man
No.
either. It won't ever graduate past a certain age in a
Yeah.
certain way, and that will continue to evolve with how we do and what we prioritize, what we allow to train it, what balance of power we decide to infuse within it, where we allow for it to be utilized and where
Right.
we don't. All
Yeah.
of those decisions create a very different world depending upon which way they go, or depending upon which, country, institution, government decides to enforce or not. So I am more excited, thankfully, than I am terrified, but I don't think that you have any sense of intelligence if you aren't a little bit terrified.
100%. And I
Yeah,
also feel like depending on the domain that gets prioritized from a,
exactly.
workflow automation perspective, from what is
Mhm.
marketable, from what is sellable to people, AI has matured very differently in different spectrums. And I think when it comes to leadership, particularly, I would still consider it to be in a toddler stage, not teenager yet.
Yep.
So I do feel that there is a long way to go there. But thank you for sharing that very, very nuanced and holistic perspective. If there is anything that you want to leave the listeners with, because sometimes I feel that leaders struggle to listen to that inner voice. Maybe what
Mhm.
maybe share a practice that has helped you.
Oh, I meditate every day. Well, at least I try to, and I've gotten better and better. So even if you only sit for a minute in silence with yourself, it will serve you.
All
Just
right.
like don't call it meditation.
No,
Call it like, I don't know, when you're sitting in the bathroom and the door's closed because the kids have been screaming at you or the dog's been itching at the door, just give yourself a minute of nothing.
yeah,
The nothingness is a really important teacher when it comes to centering. I've learned that's the best practice I can say for having a better understanding of my own intuition and leadership style, honestly.
that's the word.
Mm.
Thank you. And thank you so much for sharing your journey, your insights. This was a beautiful conversation, and I personally enjoyed it a lot. And thanks to everyone who tuned into BareLead. If you love this conversation, you can follow or leave us a review on Spotify or Apple Music or where you're watching us. I'm Pooja, and I'll see you next time for more raw, stripped down leadership truths. And until then, keep it real.